With all things taken into consideration, film is a pretty new art form. When you compare it to things like music, painting, architecture, theater, writing, carpentry, sewing, sports, stunts, comedy, poetry, sculpting, ceramics, public speaking, juggling, and so on and so forth, film is still pretty young. The first film ever made was only made in the year 1888, if you want to count the Roundhay Garden scene as such. Now that sounds pretty old when you count the number of years it's been since then, but compared to everything else on this list, film is still an up-and-comer in the art world. However, that's not to say that film is completely and utterly new. If anything, film is just a newer way to produce, frame, and release nearly every previously mentioned aspect of art into one complete form and piece. That's not even mentioning the added factors of new art forms like CGI and 2D animation, the use of chroma key, lighting, camera acting, directing, editing, and cinematography all bring to the table. Film in a lot of ways serves as a perfect set-piece encapsulation of every other art form, and can be used as a preservation of these moments in time. Film and photography act as time capsules of events, whether they be real, fictional, altered, distorted, or anything else. They can be brief and unclear, long and detailed, emotional, boring, and anything else you can put your imagination to. The idea of a photograph being a stolen moment in time that you can keep either physically or digitally is both wonderful and haunting, and entirely accurate to the idea of film. You can see it in what you want to see. But once you begin to add more context, that's when filmmakers begin to take hold of you. Context such as narrative, constructed scene with movement, blocking, lighting, dialogue, musical score, foley, and sound effects. Many people say that cinema is a visual medium, but something that I cannot stand is the complete disregard of music. Music can fundamentally change the tone of a scene when used properly or even experimentally. But cinema is more than just a beefed-up version of photography. That's not to say that photography doesn't have its merits or is inherently better or worse than cinema, but film has its own unique properties to it because of the ability to add in and create more explicit context. Sometimes the context can be used to enhance a scene, sometimes context can be blocked or expounded upon to enhance a scene. The ending of Hereditary is great because it doesn't give the audience all the context that they need initially. But why is adding context to cinema so important? What's the purpose of adding it? Well, it's because it controls the audience arguably better than any other form of media. While the viewer doesn't have to physically and mentally engage with the film, even passive viewing experience can make the viewer appreciate or at least enjoy the film experience. You can even look at terrible schlock films like Michael Bay Transformer film series, and even have some redeeming qualities to them, like how they have interesting action and fun set pieces. You can still be engaged in these films without having your mind going at 100% thinking about everything that's going on in the background and foreground. Films have messages in them, intentional or not. They all have something to say, even the Michael Bay Transformers films.
He's so nice. The underlines during the war, they called him many things. Nice was never one of them.
Just like the art form itself, it can be as simple or as complex as it wants to be. But because cinema is an audiovisual medium, it's harder to not let it take control of you than something else. A book, you can stop reading or trail off thinking about something else. A piece of art, you can simply not find all that attractive to look at or not understand what it's trying to say. Once again, I'm not trying to say that cinema is any way superior to these other art forms inherently. But what I am saying is that film doesn't let go of you. Even if you don't want to watch a film, it's got a grip on you. And if it's got something to say, then it's going to say it. Depending on how you're watching a film, the only way to stop watching is by turning it off or walking out the theater.
Touch this woman with your hands and caress her.
Cinema has created its own form of language too, such as the close-up that filmmakers use to emotionally gut-punch the viewer, because we humans have a tendency to push into the eyes and face of someone to understand them more. From this, in a sort of twisted hedgehog's dilemma, we can see how learning to care about a character and actions in a film, we can also hurt ourselves while watching it. When we learn to care for someone, we often hurt when we see them in pain. Another way in which films stick out as an art form is with the photography term known as punctum, essentially meaning an image that sticks out to you, and I can think of so many films that fill that definition. Often punctum film, I feel, acts like a calling card or reminder for the viewer to come back to reevaluate a scene or film. Most times they have a reason for being there, whether to put a cap on a particularly important scene or moment, but also, they're just really nice to look at. But all of this is why I love cinema so much. It's why many people consider cinema to be a sort of joyride. It takes over you, it controls you, and takes you on an adventure with images and scenes that you'll never forget, to tell you stories of people in worlds similar and different, happy and sad, long and short, and at the end of it all, they look good while doing it.